All right, we should be live. Let me go make sure. Yeah, we are. Good to go.
It's off the tracks. Jet. It's Rafe. We're back.
Finally.
Listen. Oh my goodness. Talk about finally. Now listen, a lot of people probably think this was another one of those.
We pump
Oh,
faked him.
OTT, they came back. Oh, they did the thing again. They fell for it again award.
That's what it was.
Listen. I'm not saying this. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not saying this to get any sympathy.
Right.
I'm not saying this to get anyone to start a GoFundMe for me.
Right.
But I literally died.
Right.
All right.
Literally.
Last night's slumber ended a 33-hour span of no sleep for me. So, and granted, it was only 33 hours because I think Friday night I slept an hour and a half, woke up at like 6:30, or woke up at 6, took some medicine, and then fell back asleep for 6 hours. Otherwise, the streak would have been a lot longer. But I thought I would do 33 hours for Miles Turner and then
Right.
call it at that for some good luck. But you know what? Trust me, I've wanted to be back. I'm sure you have as well. How
Yeah,
are
I've been
you
itching.
feeling?
A lot better. I wasn't down for the count as long as you. I kind of had like a night and half a day of feeling pretty bad. But got some meds in me. We're almost 100%. I'd say we're about like 98, 99%, but we're almost there.
Yeah, I'm still dealing with a slight cough every
Yep.
now and again. I'm gonna try and mute myself anytime
Yeah, I'll try
that
to
I
be
feel one
mindful of that as well.
But it's good to be back. I've been wanting to be back. I've been wanting to talk about these series. Minnesota, Oklahoma City, kick us off tonight. A little bit
Yes.
of bias for both of us in these
Yes.
series. You starting us out tonight. But listen, I have, before we kind of actually talk about the actual game itself,
Mhm.
I've thought this as well on Saturday. This makes no sense that this game being played tonight.
It doesn't make a lot of
There's
sense either. The Eastern Conference should have probably kicked this one off. I don't know. There was something I don't know why it
It was
worked
because the
out
game
like
7.
this. Yeah, I guess it was the game 7, but
Because if it
yeah,
went to game 7 for the if the East went to game 7, they would have played on Monday, I think.
right. So, but that's what happens whenever you play a long series. You're gonna have a short turnaround one way or another. They would have got one extra day of rest. They're gonna have to play. No excuses. Here we go.
The long series that you're referring to, they knock off the Nuggets obviously in 7. Um, we didn't really get to talk too much about the ending of that series, but I think it's pretty important when talking
Yeah.
about this series because the Timberwolves have had a little bit longer time to rest. The Thunder just played the biggest game of the season 2 days ago. And granted, it was pretty comfortable after the first quarter. But is that at all going to play? Is that going to be a factor at all tonight?
I think it is, especially since Minnesota was able to finish that series relatively quickly. They've had a lot of rest. You can go back and forth on the rest versus rust debate over and over. I think rest is by far more important, especially whenever you see all the injuries that have taken place already in the playoffs. Like, health is a huge factor to having a championship run. It's luck. Health is luck, but that's a huge factor. So. In terms of the rest factor, yeah, obviously huge advantage for Minnesota, and they got a chance to, with fresh legs, come into Oklahoma City and throw a big first punch here in the Western Conference Finals.
If you really, I mean, because I think that makes this game so much bigger. I really do, because if you're Minnesota, you kind of feel like, hey, they're coming off a game a couple days ago. They're tired. We come in and we could steal game 1 right
Yeah.
out of the chute, flip home court advantage. That changes everything. So I think game 1 tonight is a little bit bigger than maybe initially people, or maybe even people think right now, even 25 minutes to game time. You know, so that's kind of one point I was thinking about that on my walk a little bit is, you know, game one is usually e- e- every game in the playoffs is big, of course, but
Yeah.
and you can always come back from down 1-0, but for a team like the Timberwolves, who are already underdogs in this series, maybe not as big as underdogs as people think they are, but nonetheless underdogs, if they can come out here and steal momentum right out of the chute, I mean, that'll change this whole series. That'll get your guys going a little bit. Um, this series is going to be. I do think this series is going to be so much fun. I think it's going to be a battle of um, systems and schemes, but I also think it's going to be a battle between two superstars, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Anthony Edwards.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Minnesota, obviously step one is taking either game one or game two, and I think their best shot is tonight in game one with such a quick turnaround for Oklahoma City, coming down from a really emotional game seven for these young guys, biggest game of their lives thus far. Um, so I think this is their best shot at stealing one of these first two home games. Obviously, if they don't, it's not. This series is going to go long, and I think the Eastern Conference series is going to go long too. I think both of these are going to be very good series, teams that are very well matched up against each other. Um, I think Minnesota's very good, especially with Julius Randle going the way he's going right now. That could cause a lot of issues for OKC. But like you said, yeah, two young superstars, really four young superstars across the Final Four right now of guys looking to cement their legacy and really put them into that next tier of the guy or one of the guys of the NBA here. And I'm excited to watch these games and get down to the nitty gritty of how any of these teams can win this because it is so wide open.
You're mentioning Julius Randle. He's averaging 24 points per game in the playoffs right now. Um, how do you stop that? And whose assignment is that going to be over these next, however 6-7 games, however many it ends up going?
There was a lot of J-Dub on Julius Randle throughout the regular season, and I think he did a pretty good job of defending him. I would say he's probably starts as the primary defender on him, and that's a good start. I mean, as we know with OKC, they can deploy a many number of defenders, and even if it, I mean, we saw in Game 7, even if it doesn't, height-wise, weight-wise, doesn't match up that way, they'll go to it until they find something that works. I think you're going to see OKC leave a lot of shooters open. It's what they play the percentages. That's what they do, and it'll either hurt them or it'll help them. We've seen it hurt them last year. We've seen it help them in the series that they just played against Denver. So I think you're going to see a lot of loading up on Anthony Edwards to try and not let him do what he does. Second priority is Julius Randle. And I think you're going to see the same thing on the other side, too, is a lot of loading up on SGA. Denver played a lot of zone to do that. I don't think Minnesota needs to default to zone because they have much better perimeter defenders. They may throw it out there a little bit every now and then. But with Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Jaden McDaniel, they have long wings. They don't really need to default to zone. As long as they're able to rotate out of that, they'll probably send two to them like they did throughout the regular season. So, it's going to be a lot of taking number one away, and I feel like we say it all the time in the postseason. It's going to be, who's going to knock down the open shots, and it feels like, again, it's going to come down to the open outside shots from the other guys, and who makes more of those will probably determine a lot of the winners in this series.
There was something I was thinking about kind of all day today about this series, and it was the lineup that Oklahoma City runs. They run the two bigs a lot with Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren, but there's a drop off when you go to Jalen Williams, who's 6'5",
Right.
right? You've got a guy when you're kind of looking at this this lineup. Would you be surprised at all if maybe Minnesota plays a little bit bigger and they go Bear, Reed, and McDaniels in there as well? They throw McDaniels at the 3 I mean, do you think that they would do that? And do you think that Oklahoma City would have trouble with that?
I wouldn't be surprised with that at all. I think the number one thing being is how there was a couple games where Oklahoma City really struggled in rebounding in the Denver series, and I think that's something that Minnesota could exploit running a bit of a bigger lineup. Um, so that's one reason I could see them doing that. And as you said, outside of the bigs, it's not as much length and height there for OKC. So I think, the rebounding aspect of that is really what will play into that. Maybe not a whole lot. It may be something they kind of go to sparingly. And I know they haven't played Gobert, a ton in the first few series. It's kind of been, situationally. So maybe there's just more Gobert just based on that, OKC has a bit better center. I mean, really, Lakers, no center. Warriors next, no center. So you'll probably see more big lineups for them just because of that. But I think it's something that they can kind of exploit rebounding wise for sure.
Now, granted, their primary lineup is Conley, Edwards, McDaniels, Randall, and Gobert, which is already a big lineup. So that's kind of my point there. With the big lineup, obviously they will play a bigger lineup, but I'm just curious if maybe getting another center in there is something that could just be interesting to throw out there. But I the Timberwolves side, I think it really intrigues me because they've got 7 guys really that can. I don't think Conley has played. I have not been a fan of Mike Conley at all during this entire postseason. I think that he has, he's been a good facilitator. Don't get me wrong, and he set up the offense. I think his assist to turnover ratio is like almost 5 right now. So he's been good in that department. But whenever they've needed him to shoot, he's not been reliable at all. But when you look at that rotation, and it's probably 7 reliable guys, 8 reliable guys if you want to count Nickeil Alexander-Walker. But with the Thunder, it's a totally different animal of off the top of your head, probably 10, 11 guys that could play in the first quarter, no questions asked, and come in and hit reliable shots. And when you look at this Timberwolves lineup, okay, well, let's talk about this. Of those 7, 8 guys, how many of those 7, 8 guys play over any of those 10 or 11 guys on the Thunder?
I mean, yeah.
I'll give you Edwards. I'll give you Randall. I give you McDaniels, and Gobert's a phenomenal defender. But outside of them, I mean, does anyone realistic? DiVincenzo, but like
maybe I think when Naz Reid's going, I think you can squeeze him in there. Yeah.
But this Thunder team is so incredibly deep and so many strengths at every position that they just feel too powerful for this Minnesota team.
Yeah, it's part of why they were so good in the regular season, and a lot of people talk about how rotations shorten in the postseason, but you got a team like this, it's not necessarily something you want to go away from. I think, especially when you have so many defenders. If you want to make a guy like Anthony Edwards be uncomfortable, you got to have somebody on him pretty much all game. And to be able to rotate guys like Lou Dort and Alex Caruso and Cason Wallace throughout the entire game is huge. And those are just 3 players. You can go down the list of a number of guys. I think you'll see a lot of guys tonight and try and see what they like best. We saw a little bit of Isaiah Joe early in the Denver series, but, towards the last few games, there really wasn't any of him until games were out of hand. Kind of same with Jalen. Jalen Williams played some big. He didn't play a lot of minutes, but the minutes he played were huge. Jay Will, that is. The minutes he played were huge in defending Jokic and just having a third body to throw out there. And then Game 7, he didn't see the floor until the very end of the game. So it's just a lot of different looks that they can deploy throughout a 7-game series. And I think they hold that ace up their sleeve of putting Alex Caruso on Jokic. They did a little bit in the series before, but to just go to that first quarter of the game and really play that the entire game. So, maybe there's some looks that we don't see in game one that they hold back for later games in the series. Obviously, you want to win every game. You don't want to lose a game just from experimenting lineups or whatever. But, there may be some guys that we don't see tonight or do see tonight that we don't see later in the series. So depth is a huge part of OKC. And, but, just because, Minnesota plays 7 good guys. So I don't think that's going to be the deciding factor of this series. Like maybe it was in Denver a little bit.
Sure.
I think Minnesota has a much better chance at beating OKC than Denver did. And Denver, credit to Denver, they pushed them to 7 games. So it's going to be a very entertaining series.
And I think another factor in winning that Denver series was a little Alex Caruso action off the bench guarding Nikola Jokic.
Absolutely, it was. That's what won him that game.
Just roughing him up down low, just absolutely bodying him. It was
a sight to behold.
And one of those things about that game is seriously, excuse me, but that first quarter, Christian Braun comes out like a bat out of hell.
Yeah.
And the Thunder start out back against the wall. And I talked all series about it, is this maturity level. And they talked about it on the Bill Simmons podcast. They called it playoff puberty. And I liked that. It looked like they went through that. They looked mature again. I am, to go back to are they going to come out tired and a hangover game coming off a Game 7 win? I don't think so. I really don't think they will, because I think to an extent, I think they expect to be here. Not to an extent, even at all. I think they flat out expect to be here. Everyone's telling them they should be here, but I think they expect to be here. And I think that they showed me a little bit during that Nuggets series that they're built for the moment, but they also showed me they can let a couple games slip away. I think that's going to be such a huge part of this series. Is I think with a team like the Nuggets, who had went through everything they had went through towards the end of that season, of the firing of their head coach and general manager, with everything that they had gone through, the Timberwolves are a little different. I don't think you can have those slip ups against the Timberwolves, because I think they'll make you pay for them. If you slip up a couple times and it's Game 5 and you're tied 2-2, and I guess that game would be in Oklahoma City then, okay. But regardless, you're 2-2 Game 5. Minnesota, I think, is a team that could make that hurt a little.
Yeah,
bit.
I mean, the Thunder definitely did a lot of, we talked about it a little bit on a live stream that we did previous, where I kind of, I laid it out like, look, there's a lot of play. There's just a couple plays that you could lay out and say they were 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 plays away from sweeping the Nuggets, and they did some things to let them kind of hang around. Obviously, Denver played well, and they had a good game plan, and you can kind of make arguments to Denver of they're a couple plays away from winning the series. So I don't think you can make those same mistakes, like you said, against this Minnesota team. They're a much better team, much better defensively. They have an absolute killer in Anthony Edwards. You can't let them hang around. You can't make those same mistakes, especially in the Western Conference Finals. To kind of go back a little bit, though, like this Thunder team is a very uncommon team. They're the second youngest team to get the number 1 seed, only behind themselves the previous year. So this core group of guys, like, they don't confine to rules put on them by other people. With that being said, though, Anthony Edwards is a very uncommon player as well, and he is a monster. I had another point. I can't remember. I already lost it, but I think I know what it was. I think the Denver series was important for OKC to go through a series like that, to get pushed to the limit like that, to already go through that, because regardless of how well they play in this Timberwolves series, they're going to get pushed to the limit again. The Timberwolves are going to win games in this series. To have already gone through that and especially so early, and to have that under your belt now, I think that was very important for Oklahoma City, and that's going to have them more equipped for the moment of whenever they lose a couple games, because it is going to happen.
Because I was going to ask you, what do you do to kind of avoid those slip ups? But do you already think that they've kind of that Denver series was enough to be like, all right, guys, this is what we can't do?
Yeah, I think the slip ups came from kind of the foul situation in game one. I think that was a slip up. And other parts of it, I think they got tight in certain parts of the series. I think the game that went into overtime, I can't remember what game it was exactly, but they got tight in the fourth quarter. They got tight in overtime. I think the start of game 7, they were pretty tight. So just going through that stuff in that series, the biggest thing that I think will carry over, or could potentially carry over, is the missing outside shots. That's the biggest thing of what you want to see improvement from that series to this series, because if they can do that, I think that gives them a pretty good chance of winning. If they can kind of get back to where they were shooting in the regular season, doesn't have to be 50% from 3, but Lou Dort was a 40% shooter from outside in the regular season, and he shot, I think it was like 30%. It might have been under 30% from 3. The Thunder have 3 of the worst 3-point shooting percentages right now in the playoffs. Dort, Dub, and Shea. So, and Shea wasn't a high volume 3-point shooter, but he shot over 30%. He was shooting 29% right now, I think. So, I think the biggest thing, and it's not necessarily a slip up, it's just they're missing shots. So, but yeah, the slip up that did happen, the coaching slip up, get that out of the way in that series. You're more well equipped to handle losses, I think, more so than slip ups. I don't think there's any room for slip ups, and hopefully they don't slip up. But you're more well equipped to suffer losses, I think, or to handle that. And they're going to happen because the Timberwolves are a good team.
If I talk to you tonight about, well, this game, I mean, this game probably won't dip off. Wait, TNT, does TNT have it, or does ESPN?
ESPN tonight. Yeah, ESPN got the Western Conference Finals this year.
ESPN has the West, and then, okay, I didn't know if it was going to be the same thing. Thank the heavens that I don't have to. Oh my! Let me tell you something. Before I ask this question, I just want to say, I cannot believe that I lucked out, and I don't have to listen to Mike Breen commentate a Pacers-Knicks series again, because last year when that happened, dude, oh my goodness, Game 7 sounded like a funeral, and while that was awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that
I guess that's a good point. I didn't even think about that, because now they've got Reggie Miller, and Knicks fans are talking about Reggie Miller being on the.
And I'll say this: Reggie Miller.
It's even now.
Reggie Miller did a game in the Garden last year during that series, and it was totally unbiased, by the way. And in which case, Josh Hart went over to Reggie Miller.
Yeah, that
at
is
the end of that game.
That's right.
So I don't want to hear anything about anything, because I watched Stephen A. Smith pre-show bring Spike Lee over and have his arm around him during the pre-show. So I don't want to hear anything about bias. But if I talk, that the game won't tip off. My point was, game's not going to tip off till later than usual, probably, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, who knows?
So if I talk to you, we'll say 2.5 hours from now, what was the key if the Thunder win, and what was the key if the Timberwolves won?
I think if the Thunder win, it was J-Dub and Chet stepping up, and all. I don't want to default to outside shots falling. I think that's just kind of a given. But if Dub and Chet step up as the number 2 or number 3 guys, whichever way you want to put them, because I think either could be a 2, the second option. If they step up, play well alongside Shea, that's the key to them winning. On the Timberwolves side, I think it's another Julius. If Julius Randle keeps going the way he's going, they're going to be tough to beat alongside Anthony Edwards. I think the X factor for the Timberwolves, though, is Naz Reid, because he's kind of the type of player that the Thunder have had problems with. You look at Aaron Gordon last series. You look at PJ Tucker, a year ago. The big forward that can stretch the floor a little bit. I think Naz Reid is a big X factor in this series for the Timberwolves. But for OKC, it's their number 2 and number 3 guy getting going. For the Timberwolves, it is their defense is going to play well. They're going to play well all series. It's a good defense. It's Julius Randle playing the way he's been playing. So it's the others, to put it bluntly, but it's the number 2 options. They have to be there.
Yeah, I think the Timberwolves. You got to close. You got to close out on shooters. You have to stop the outside shooting for sure. I think Jaden McDaniels can have a really big series here. I know I kind of framed that question earlier a little poorly, but I do think Jaden McDaniels is going to have a size advantage at a lot of the time during the series, and I think he's going to be able to elevate and get his shots up. He's just going to have to knock him down. I think he can have a really big series, but I think you're kind of there with the Thunder as well as the supporting cast and Holmgren, and he needs to have a big series. I'll be curious to see how they play this series. If maybe, because it's a little different now that Randall is. I mean, he's averaging 24 a game during the playoffs. So now it can't just be, all right, you know what, we'll let Ant have his, and then we'll figure everything else out. And Oklahoma City, I think, have enough really good defenders to not do that anyways. But I'm going to be curious to see how both of these defenses play and kind of what they have drawn up for each other, and how much will Minnesota be inspired by what Denver did.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious on this. I'll ask you one more question. I'll let you lock in.
Yeah.
And I know you're going to hate this question because I'm going to hate it
All
too.
right.
How many games and who wins?
Oh God. Okay. I think this is going 6 or 7. I'm gonna go. I don't want to do it because I know I'm going to look back, and if they lose the series, I'm going to say, well, it's because of what I said. I'm going to take the Thunder in 7, but honestly, wouldn't be surprised if the Timberwolves win this in 6 or 7 either. It's going to be close. It's going to be back and forth, kind of what we saw in the Denver series. But I'll say, because of what OKC went through, kind of. Not to say that the Timberwolves were in the Western Conference Finals last year. Not to say they haven't gone through, series like the Denver one. I think they had a 7-game series last year. I can't remember against who it was against. Might have been Denver. I think it was Denver.
Or was it Denver? Was it?
I think it was Denver. If I'm remembering correctly.
Well, no, because they wouldn't have played the Lakers. Did they play the Lakers last year? No, they played the
no, I don't
Suns,
think so.
didn't they?
I'm pretty sure it was Denver. They went 7
they
against to
played-
get to the Western Conference Finals. But I'll take the Thunder in 7.
You're right.
I don't like it.
You're right, it was Denver.
I don't like it. I feel like it's going to backfire on me. But the Timberwolves are good, and they could easily win this series as well.
So, I hate to hammer home this whole Jaden McDaniels agenda. I think he could have a big series, and if he does, I think the Thunder win in 6. If he doesn't, and the Thunder come out and are pretty mature, and they learn from their mistakes in the Nuggets series, Thunder in 5.
I would love that. Yeah, they're deep. They're good.
Insanely deep. And if the Thunder win this series in 5, and even if they win it in 6, I'll think that the season's probably over. But I think this Thunder team is so good. They're so dominant. They can be so dominant. They're just deep, top to bottom. You got to guard everyone. I mean, it's just, you have to worry about literally every square inch of the floor on the offensive side of the ball. And even if you get to do that, then you got to go score on them. And Denver did a good job of that, but they also happen to have Nikola Jokic. So, now granted, Minnesota has Anthony Edwards. Don't get me wrong, and Julius
it's a whole
Randle again,
different
who's
kind of
playing
problem
good.
now.
Correct. It's one that you got to figure out. Young coach, young team. So that's why I think it'll be in 6. I'll take Thunder in 6 confidently. But if I was being a little bold, Thunder in 5.
That would be great.
That's all.
Yeah.
What I mean, anything else here? Do you want to talk yourself into a jinx? I mean,
no, I don't want to talk myself into a jinx. I probably already have, but Yeah, it's
I'm
gonna
sorry to
be
put that
his...
question on the table.
No, that's okay. I mean, it has to be asked. It has to be asked in a show like this, so I understand why. I was prepared for it, and I was going through. Do I just say what I think, or do I say the non-jinxed answer? But if I say the non-jinxed answer, do the gods know that I'm just saying it to not jinx them, and then that just jinxes them anyway? Like, these are the mental gymnastics I go through playoff time. I have a lucky bracelet that I wear that I break out playoffs. Wore it at the start of game. I'm not kidding. Wore it started game 7. I've wore it every game so far. The Nuggets jump out to that 11-point lead. Took it off, and the Thunder went on that run. Took the lead. Never looked back. So
Hell with that bracelet.
I'm starting game 1 tonight. No bracelet. So these are the no bracelet tonight. Start game 1. We'll see how it goes. I might have to make a halftime adjustment. I don't know yet. But yeah, these are the types of things that I do come playoff time. But it's I'd rather have to I'd rather have to go through all this rather than be a Bears fan and not even have to worry about things like that. So
gonna be a good year in Chicago this year.
No,
thank you guys so
I'm
much.
staying low. I'm staying low until we start winning games.
You guys are gonna want Justin Fields back by week 6. Don't worry.
Potentially.
Could you imagine we get a little Pacers Thunder and then Jets Bears in the Super Bowl?
I've always said when the Bears make the Super Bowl, it's going to be against the Jets. I just know it is, just because the two franchises.
I never thought about. Just
because the two franchises feel like they're so tied together. Right. But there's a real chance that it's Thunder Pacers, and that would be excruciating for us. But
we feel like we have to live watch the games together.
I don't know. We probably start hating each other.
Be good content.
It would. It would.
Okay, I'll let you go and lock in on this game.
All right.
I'm assuming you have it pulled up. It's not started yet, has it?
I don't know. I was getting it pulled up, but then I think we're still good. I haven't got an alert on my phone.
All right.
Yeah, we're
Thank
good.
everyone for tuning in. Probably no post show tonight because I actually have work now and a job, and so got to be in bed. But maybe we'll see how we're feeling.
We'll see. If not, we'll be here tomorrow.
Unless another sickness pops up out of the blue.